situations where I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, whatever I can be, right? We appreciate him being in because he has a lot of demands on his time. He's entering his 4th year as a head coach of the LSU Tigers, and he's made his mark, as you know. Led the Tigers to the NCAA tournament in all 3 seasons thus far, and he led LSU to a national championship, the 7th in the illustrious history of the Story program in 2023. It was LSU's first 50-win season since 2017, and he was voted National Coach of the Year by D1 Baseball, the American Baseball Coaches Association, and Collegiate Baseball Newspaper. Led Arizona to a College World Series appearance. LSU's ranked as high as number 2 in the country right now, and I don't know, he should consider firing the guy for not being number 1. I can't understand that. But that said, they're going to open their season. That's the pressure at LSU. February 14th at home against Purdue, Fort Wayne. Please give a warm welcome to a national championship coach, Jay Johnson. Jay, welcome and thank you for being here. I know this has been crazy. It's been crazy for everybody. We lost some people in the process, gained some people, but I know you have to make the time to do it. We deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here, and there was never a question of wanting to. When I wake up every day, every decision I make is basically, is this what's best for LSU baseball? Like right now, and with the weather situation we all had last week, making practice adjustments and those types of things. So as I told you, if we got done the next 5 days, what we needed to, I would be here. And as it turned out, I ended up yelling at my team a lot. So they needed a couple hours away from me today. So the LSU Tigers say thank you, Ken, for having me come out here right now.
I rescued them, obviously. The expectations are enormous. You knew that coming in, but you relished that. That's one of the things that attracted you to the job. And you hear all the catcalling every time you lose a game. We don't want that guy, the whole deal. But talk about that and being in a program at this level and the responsibility and the acceptance of that responsibility.
Yeah, I've never really looked at that much, and I know that might surprise everybody. I think one of the coaches talked about developing a process and being very committed to doing that. And for me, it's always not what we want to do, but what do we need to do to get to what we want to do. And my whole life, and we can all relate to this, is built around going to the College World Series and being in Omaha in June, and that was no different at Arizona. You know, we were able to get there a couple times in 5 years. So what I love about the opportunity is you're positioned to have an opportunity to do that most years at LSU because of the great tradition that Coach Burtman built, the fan support, the resources, and as all of the coaches mentioned, the great baseball players, you know, in our proximity. And to be honest with you, it was one of the most pleasant surprises, you know, of accepting this job, the amount of good players that are close to us.
And you, of course, have to retool, as everyone does, every year. How has it changed with recruiting high school athletes because of the fact that you have so many transfers involved, especially at high-level programs? It makes it tougher for the high school kid to get that scholarship and get that opportunity. Just talk about that dynamic.
Yeah, as I mentioned, like I don't have like a thought on this is what it should be all the time. And again, what is best for our program right now always jumps to the forefront. And every year it's been a little bit different. You know, a large reason of choosing to come here was because I knew there was a couple really good young players on the roster. Obviously Dylan Cruz, Trey Morgan. And that was very, very appealing. But when I showed up, we had a long ways to go in developing a pitching staff that was capable of competing for a national championship. So once we got here, we had to get a couple guys immediately. I'm not too popular in Tucson anymore because I took 3 of our players and brought them over here. And thank God we did because, you know, they're key contributors on that first team. And then having a good first season, jumping up in the SEC standings, we were still short on the mound. And so we were fortunate to bring in Paul Skeens, Thatcher Hurd, Christian Little to add to what we had. And, you know, we're all happy with how 2023 went. And then losing a lot of guys off that team, 13 players drafted, which is not an LSU record, it's an SEC record. There was a lot of retooling for last year, and we were able to get a couple really good players in. And then this year, we had 9 more players drafted. So it's been a total of like 23 players to Major League Baseball over the last 2 seasons. We had to go get more players and older players, and we had more transfers this year than we did in the combined 3 years prior, and it was more out of necessity. With that being said, we have some really good young high school players, from Louisiana and from all over the country. And my hope is, with this 34-man roster, it lands at about, you're about 75% players you bring in out of high school, 25% out of the transfer portal. But I'll never set a bar on that, because my job is what's best for our team, and that's what we'll always do.
Following scrimmages and reading everything that's posted, it looks like you have a plethora of left infield options and really behind the plate too. Just talk about what you have there.
Yeah, I think it's been an exciting year because there is so much new. We actually only have 12 players. This is probably the fewest in however many years of LSU baseball history. We only have 12 players that actually played in a game for us last season in 2024. And so they're all the right guys that you want to have return. So there's 12 of them, there's 10 high school freshmen, and there's 10 players from the transfer portal. So blending all of that together is really, really important. And the coaches would all talk about your team dynamic, your locker room has to be solid. We're spending a lot of time on that element, and then making it about execution on the baseball side. We have some work to do to figure out what the exact formula is for this team to be successful, where some of the pieces go specifically at the catching position. We have one of the best high school players in the country. We were able to bring in Kate Arambidi from Houston, Texas, and then we got a transfer from Indiana State named Luis Hernandez, who hit 23 home runs for a super regional team last year, and both of them have done a great job behind the plate. So that's probably your two front runners. Blaze Priester also can catch and has tremendous power, and will figure into the catching DH situation as well. And in the infield, we actually that's where a quarter of the returners are coming from, with Jared Jones, hit 28 home runs last year for us, which is the second most home runs I've had any player hit, next to Chris Bryant in one season. Stephen Milam is back, was a freshman All-American last year, and then Michael Braswell, who transferred from South Carolina, who did a really good job for us last year. So they'll kind of be the head of the deal in the infield.
And then, of course, pitching, because you said it. When you had Paul, you had a really good number 2 as well, as it turned out that year. And in that league, you have to have 7, 8 guys that you can go out and win a game for you if you want to win in that league. Talk about where you're at with that right now.
Yeah, I think kind of flew under the radar a little bit last year, because of Paul Skeens and how great he is. Obviously, he's the best pitcher on the planet. But last year we had 3 guys, Luke Holman, Gage Junk, Griffin Herring. Those are 3 of the best pitchers I've ever coached in my entire career anywhere. And they're all onto professional baseball now. And we actually set another SEC record last year with the amount of pitchers drafted. We led the country in strikeouts. So we have a lot of talent, but we only have 2 of the top 12 guys returning from last year in terms of innings and productivity. I like the talent, like I said, but getting them in games, getting them experience, figuring out exactly where the best recipe fits is going to be really important for us. They definitely had the upper hand on the offense this weekend, though, and I think all of us coaches would tell you that's how you want to walk out of your inter squads, because if you're beating the heck out of your own pitching, the season's probably not going to go very good.
And I'd be remiss not to ask about 1 or 2, if not 3, freshman newcomers that could make an impact, which is not easy to do at that program and in that league. Anybody that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm very excited about this group. When you come in, and this has been a real positive change in college baseball, where you can't get to players when they're as young now because of NCAA rules. And I think we're probably all making a lot better decisions now because of that. But we have William Schmidt, from Catholic High in Baton Rouge, and without any disrespect to anybody that's ever pitched in the state of Louisiana before, his high school season last year has to be one of the top 5 performance seasons in the history of the state. He was probably a surefire first-round draft pick, and he decided to bypass professional baseball. He actually pulled his name out of the draft about 3 hours before it started because he wanted to come to LSU. We're talking about a kid that lives like a quarter of a mile from Alex Box Stadium and grew up wearing purple and gold pajamas. And, he sent me a picture like 3 hours before the draft started. He's holding a big stuffed animal tiger. And I said, hey, big guy, I'm just making sure this is an LSU Tiger,
Not
not
Detroit.
a Detroit Tiger. Yeah. But he's got a chance to be really special, and you know the stuff is easy to see, but the competitive nature, poise on a mound, like it's all there. And Cason Evans is another one from Houston, Texas. We've really made recruiting in Texas a huge priority. You know, obviously because there's a lot of great talent there. But to maybe disrupt some of our opponents, you know, try to get a double win that maybe we're not playing against them also at Texas or Texas A&M or Oklahoma or Arkansas. And then Derek Curiel from California, who I've actually known since he was in 7th grade. And that's the old recruiting model that we've all worked under. Has had an outstanding fall for us, and we'll probably play right away. And really excited about those 3 and a few more as well.
Last but not least, this conference. I mean, it's mind-boggling to add Texas, you know, add Oklahoma to what you have already. And we can name like 10 teams easily off the top, and realistically 12 teams to get into the NCAA tournament. Just talk about the league this year and what you see of it. Now you got our buddy Paul in South Carolina as well, so just talk about it.
Yeah, like I saw you mentioned something about a ranking of 3rd or 2nd in the country. Like, you know, I just want to win the first game of the season, honestly. And you know what I've learned about the league, and this is with the greatest respect for everybody out there, it's kind of become the moon, you know, to college baseball in terms of the week in, week out grind. Nothing has really surprised me about it, but our 2 trips to Omaha, Arizona, we beat SEC teams in the Super Regional and felt like, okay, like this, you know, got a pretty good path here. But then when you do it 10 weeks in a row, and I really pissed somebody off at the SEC office last year because somehow we, in 4 consecutive weeks, played Florida, who we had just played for the national championship, at Arkansas, who was the #1 team in the country, and they win 50 games every year, Vanderbilt, who's the only team that's won 2 national championships in the last 15 years, and Tennessee, at Tennessee, who won the national championship. So, man, I got to give those people a call over there and try to. But it's the greatest challenge. Now, what makes a real problem and a real headache is I got to play these guys on Tuesday, and they all do a great job with their teams. And one of the underrated things about what's great about being the coach at LSU is the good programs around us. I think there was like 7 or 8 Louisiana teams in the NCAA tournament last year, and my whole life, like I said, is built around Omaha. And the RPI benefit we get from playing these really great programs is really awesome.
Well, the Tigers, of course, getting set to get started too, as mentioned, on the 14th. So we're going to let them get back to Baton Rouge shortly, and let our coaches get back where they want as well. Let's give Jay Johnson a big round of applause.